Alright, so the title of this video is Three Monkeys, Infinite Insanity. It's called Three Monkeys because I'm going to try and use this story from the Chuang Tzu about a monkey handler to illustrate the process and the mechanics of profound delusion and dishonesty, confusion, and disempowerment that is really quite popular and getting more and more popular and prevalent today in terms of social movements and cultural shifts that are happening right now. And the stories from the Chuang Tzu, and people usually are mistaken and think that this book is like a philosophical text from a philosopher like Aristotle. They want to analyze the ontology and the phenomenology and all these types of things, when that is actually pretty far from the truth, but that's not really the scope of the video. So the story is basically there's a monkey handler and he is feeding the monkeys. The monkeys get 5 bananas a day. So he starts off, he gives them 3 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And then they get super pissed. They revolt. So what does he do? He gives them 2 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, and at which case they are completely satisfied, overjoyed, they feel great, and the story goes on. But basically, most people will look at this story and not necessarily see the mechanics. So what I want to do is look at the mechanics in a specific way, which is the first and most important thing, is that basically they get 5 bananas a day. They didn't decide that. They are living in captivity. They are living in profound disempowerment because someone else decided they get 5 bananas. Someone else gives them the 5 bananas. And they're down here arguing about 3 versus 2 and 2 versus 3. And basically this is a great way of understanding the conditioning of which we inherit from our upbringing, just naturally. And basically how the vast majority of the time people are arguing over and dedicating their lives passionately and emphatically to arguing 3 and 2 or 2 and 3 to the death. And this is really the level of functioning and the level of potency that people are operating at. But they think they're empowered. They think they're creating change. They think they're doing all these things. But in reality, they're still operating at a level of profound disempowerment and propagating infinite insanity. So to apply this more on a personal level, let's say within each of us, there's this actual dynamic, which we'll get to what that is a bit later. But let's say this is the root cause or the root thing that's underlying something. This piece of information, this thought structure, this belief, or this inherent conditioning. And then on one side, this produces, let's say, self-hatred. And then on the other side, let's say it produces self-love. So to walk through this, what happens is we inherit this thing, and then it usually manifests as like, oh, I feel bad about myself. I feel shitty about the world. Life is dim. And even a lot of permutations on that. And this is a tricky one to really dive into because I think very few people can even acknowledge this within themselves and can actually understand what it means. And that generally means that we're under the effect of it because we can't even see it a lot of the time. But then let's say someone does in some ways see it. So there's usually a progression that will happen is, oh, well, the solution to my self-hatred, my low self-esteem or self-worth is just, I just need to love myself. I just need to do self-love. So I need to do affirmations. I need to join social movements. I need to use a lot of different hashtags on the internet. I need to just use positive visualization and positive affirmations and love myself and do self-love, and that's the solution to the problem. But still, in reality, it does not address the underlying thing. It doesn't even consider that that is a thing, doesn't even acknowledge that it's reality. It instead goes to denial and then another manifestation of denial, which is kind of just one step removed, let's say. Another one would be, let's say we come up in this world and for some reason we believe and feel that it's really mundane. So something happens, people have an experience, and all of a sudden now their life takes on this whole spiritual dimension. But again, in reality, it's still not acknowledging or seeing or observing or understanding or even addressing in any way, shape, or form the actual underlying mechanic. It still jumps through denial up to another layer of extrapolation. And is basically what's happening on this side is that both of these things are still just reinforcing the other thing, and more just empowering the very thing that we're trying to allegedly get away from. But this is where people will spend generally their entire lives, just running in circles forever and ever and ever and ever, searching for the next thing, and oh, well, I don't feel better because of this thing, or I don't feel better because of that, or this didn't work out because of this, that it becomes this whole schema, which in reality is very similar to here. It's like, oh, well, no. 3 and 2 is the best. Do that for a while. Well, actually, no, 2 and 3 is best. Well, a new study came out that said 3 and 2 is better. Oh, wait, well, I talked to a shaman. I had a vision, so this one is better. But it's still just back and forth, not really addressing the actual root mechanic. So then generally what I refer to this as is dehumanized and almost slightly demonic. Demonic in the sense of not like Casper the Friendly Ghost or Disfriendly Ghost is jumping into your body and possessing you, even though a case could be made for that, but more so the emotional and psychological conviction of which these things are deeply held and rooted in the body, and the painful process it is to in some way actually address it and become aware of it. In the same way that we could say sugar addiction is in some ways demonic, because just take a person who does a lot of sugar and then take it away and watch how crazy they'll get and how emotional and how up and down and chaotic their mood will be. So it's really not that far-fetched. And what I mean by dehumanize is because of these things, really get caught up in what we might call groupthink, and really believing in labels, believing in isms and movements, and being all types of whatever labels that people use. Because the thing is the more you view yourself through these labels, the more you identify with isms and movements and social justice, whatever, is the less and less you see yourself as actually a person, and the less and less you actually see other people as people. And to take this to the extreme, people always wonder, how do people do the crazy stuff that they do? In history, how did they get people who were in their normal lives were regular, normal people, how did they get them to commit horrible things on other people? Well, how they did it was by dehumanizing them, and then, oh, they're not people, they're this group. They're not people, they're this label. They're not people, they're a member of this ism. But we're people, we're better, we're superior because we're a part of this ism. And this is really the back and forth dichotomy dynamic that people are caught up in, that causes so much conflict. Because you combine any one of these things with enough moral and emotional conviction and dedication, and you're going to have serious problems on your hands in terms of death and destruction and chaos and just more suffering for people in general. So let's say, if we just take the track of normal human life, which is, oh, I'm a really spiritual person, and I'm a powerful being, and I'm an infinite creator, bathed in infinite love, and whatever else. So you're going to take this, and then you're going to just ignore this, but then this becomes this, and then a bit later it becomes this thing, and then a bit later it becomes this thing, and then eventually we reach a state that I would label profoundly deluded, dishonest, confused, and inherently disempowered. Now, I'll unpack those statements because I realize they're probably somewhat emotionally charged words for some people. What I mean by disempowered is because you're all the way over here. Like, I'm a liberal, scientist, inclusive, aesthetic, vegetarian, vegan, non-binary, poly, non-whatever, heart chakra dominant, fire element, etc., etc., etc. You develop this insane laundry list of things. And then, but I have an autoimmune condition, and then I've been to these 17 doctors, and they told me it was this, but then I went to a shaman and they told me it was a past life thing, but then I went to a chakra healer and they said it was because my root chakra was blocked, but then it was an acupuncturist. They said I was chi deficient, I had liver chi stagnation, but then I went to a psychiatrist and they said I'm serotonin deficient. And you develop this insanely complicated laundry list of insanity. Or you could just take it to another simple extreme and be like, oh, well, I'm a Christian conservative and I'm saved by Jesus Christ and I don't believe in anything but the Bible and I'm a saved person, but everyone else is a sinner. You could take it to that level of simplicity, but it's still an equal level of insanity and delusion. Because you're so far removed from the actual root cause, you are deluded because you're completely unaware of it. You have no idea, and you probably can't even conceptualize to yourself that this is an underlying mechanic. That would be deluded. Dishonest, because you're telling everyone you're this. So you could say, oh, well, I'm like a body positive, self-love, feminist, empowered, awakened, wild woman, liberated from the chains of the patriarchy, etc. This is what you're telling people. But in reality, you're just caught in this, which we could just say, oh, you're just really insecure. Oh, you're just really usurped by a lot of false beliefs and self-images that you continually validate and believe in and give your energy and your power to that have no real validity outside of your imagination and emotional addiction to them. That would be what's actually happening. But we're all the way over here, so that's completely dishonest to ourselves and other people. Obviously, from that is confusion and disempowerment. So then we're operating from this place which is inherently dishonest, confused, and disempowered, but then we want to affect change. We want to be a healer. We want to change the world. So a good example is we want to, I don't know, empower people, or I don't know, make the world a more just and safe place. Okay? We want it to be more loving and accepting and safe. But we have not even acknowledged to any degree of acceptance or love or safety or comfort our own root causes and existing dynamics. Like, for example, the people who get really caught up in being like a moral crusader, 99% of the time have never even examined their own moral injustice, their own deep level of hypocrisy and dishonesty, and their own manipulative tendencies, their own emotional distortions. They haven't considered any of these things, but yet they're going to try to create that in the world. So in the simplest sense, you can't give what you don't have. If you're like, I'm going to be a financial advisor and I'm going to help everyone get wealthy, but you have no money, then how's that going to work? Which is effectively what people were trying to do. Which is oftentimes inherently obvious. Because generally, along with these group identities tends to be a lot of disease on both sides. A lot of ill health, a lot of problems. Which is functionally beneficial for the systems in place. So in reality, let's say these people want to be an alternative to the system. They want to take down the system. But inherently their conditioning, their behavior, their mechanics are designed to support that system. So regardless of what side of the coin they're saying is good or bad or better or worse, whether it's 3 and 2 or 2 and 3, they're still operating from the same exact place of denial and being controlled and manipulated and influenced by the same dynamic. So whatever they're expressing here is still just here, but through so many levels of complexity and extrapolation that to even have an authentic conversation is generally not possible. To even recognize authentic information, generally not that possible. And thereby it is implying a bit of a process to work through, which is not comfortable, not that enjoyable, but perhaps necessary if we want the things that we say we want. But the thing is that society and the culture, based on people operating from this conditioning, will sell people the images, the external appearances of the thing, but people are operating from this place that they don't recognize that that thing is actually not the thing. A good example is fast food. It's designed to taste like the thing, to look like the thing, to smell like the thing, but it actually isn't the thing. You eat it and you get a temporary rush, but actually you're just getting more and more depleted, more and more unhealthy, more and more dependent upon the system of power and control. But then you tell yourself, oh, well, I'm loving myself. Oh, but I'm spiritual. Oh, but I'm morally just. Oh, but I'm on the right side of history. But then you're just getting more and more addicted, more and more unhealthy, more and more disempowered. But you can't see it because you're operating at this denial, extrapolated level of reality. So hopefully that makes sense and gives some mechanics and general overviews that are applicable and relevant to basically everyone living in the modern world. If someone's watching it and they're like, oh, well, that's not me, I want to take a breather and pause on that.